Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me at the market site in Times Square, we have Brian Joyce. He's a managing director on Nasdaq's market intelligence desk. Brian, as always, thank you for joining me. It's been a very busy day for us at Nasdaq with the Peloton IPO. I think that was probably the coolest event we have ever pulled off.
Yeah, it was great. We had the IPO, the opening bell, I should say, on the outside deck as well for the first time. A tremendous amount of people here, nearly 300 people here for the IPO from Peloton. So very exciting stuff.
Yeah, and it's also very exciting to hear that the proceeds from the IPO are going back into the company and investment, and that's always an encouraging sign. Let's get into our charts. We have a lot to cover today. Let's look at the growth versus value ratio. This has been a key theme that's been in the markets for the past couple weeks.
Yeah, so at the beginning of the month, we saw a bit of a rotation out of select growth names, some high-flying stocks, and we saw some value names picking up. The reflation trade was underway. We had a bear steepening trade where the long end of the curve was moving higher than the shorter end of the curve as bonds were selling off. That typically is what you would see in a reflationary environment. So value was, for a period of time, outperforming growth. But this chart, I think, puts it into good perspective. This is the Russell 1000 Growth Index over the Russell 1000 Value Index. And as you can see, you know, we have had a minor pullback this month, relatively minor, but the long-term uptrend is still intact. It's trading above the prior highs made initially back in the summer of 18, and we broke out above that level in April. So we could now see retest of that level. The red dashed line coincides with the 40-week moving average, aka the 200-day moving average. So until this ratio dips below that, I still think growth is, the long-term trend of outperformance growth over value is still very much intact. All
right, let's move along to our next chart. The Nasdaq 100, NDX, a key product for us here. What are you taking a look at here?
Yeah, so we look at, with the ratio looking still favorable towards growth over value. Well, one of the biggest drivers of growth was one index that has a lot of the growth names in it is the Nasdaq 100, the 100 largest Nasdaq listed companies that are non-financials. And as you can see, the uptrend from the 18 lows is still, very much intact. Higher lows are underway, continue to be, and we have a brief consolidation from the recent highs made in July, but nothing at this point in time tells me that we're going to break down to the downside until that trend line is broken. It certainly has been tested quite a bit since the beginning of August, but has not yet to be broken. So would not surprise me if the trend, the intermediate term trend here continues to the upside.
Okay, moving along to the SOX index, semiconductor index, clearly a little bit of pressure there recently with more China trade talks.
Right, and so this thing peaked back in April or so. We made a minor new high in July. Similar setup here to the Nasdaq 100, but the SOX index has certainly been one of the highest flying growth industries out there. So just another example to me, I like this setup here in the SOX index. Some people see this and have been calling for this to be like a wedge-like pattern. I see it's more like a triangle kind of pattern with resistance up around that 1600, give or take a few points level. So we have the trend of higher lows into a horizontal resistance there, and I don't see it as a wedge, but time will tell. And we've had quite a bit of concerning news regarding the trade talks. Those have not gone away. We've had concerns in the bond market with the short-term funding. This index is still holding up relatively very well.
All right, let's take a look at our last chart. Bitcoin, something I cover a lot, and it seems to be the traders that I talk to, this is a very technical trade and a very key level where it is right now.
Correct. So we highlighted this ourselves in the midday update last week when it was up about 15% from here, and we noted the triangle pattern after a move of about 340%, give or take, from the December lows to the June high. So a phenomenal move in less than 6 months' time, or about 6 months' time. And then we're in a prolonged 2.5-month consolidation pattern. I was expecting a retest of the 9100 level, which is the white dashed line, which was about 10% down from where it was last week. And we got that earlier this week, and then some. It went all the way down to roughly 84.66, which happens to be another gap level, which was made back in June. So that's now your key support level, 84.66. If it does continue to break down to the downside, which would not surprise me at this point in time, our next key price range is a gap made back in May. At the lower end of the range is 64.26, and then the upper end of that support range where I see is about 7,000, 7,005, which represents the 200-day moving average, the yellow line. Right.
So I wonder if this is what the range Bitcoin will be, because it looks like this is very range bound right here. If assuming it doesn't go below the 6,400 level, maybe that's where the trading range is.
Yeah, so my expectation was for the 9100 level to hold, because that's where it has bottomed out since July. It did break that earlier this week. And the reason why I was expecting that to hold is because typically a triangle pattern is a continuation pattern. You have a trend, You consolidate, sometimes it forms a triangle. In this case, it did. Usually when that resolves, that consolidation, it resolves into the direction of the prior trend, which in this case was to the upside, but doesn't always have to be, which is why if you're day trading or swing trading, you want to set up your risk parameters accordingly.
All right, as always, great advice. Thanks so much, Brian, for joining us. Thank you for joining me on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.